My name is Dwayne Liptak Jr. I'm the Executive Vice President of Magpul Industries, and I've been at Magpul since 2012. 25 years ago, magazines were the USGI, basically was the only option. Green follower, black follower was the big thing back then in the 98, 99 time frame. I had just entered the Marine Corps, and so I was dealing with some magazines in true Marine Corps fashion of dubious vintage, likely from the Vietnam War, completely with the anodizing worn off and feed lip damage, and you would deal with going to a range, figure out during that live fire which magazines were the best and which ones were completely useless, and then you'd kind of segregate, and maybe some of them you'd have an accident with so that they'd be surveyed, but usually they'd give you back a one that didn't work just as badly as the one you turned in. So it was constant frustration with the magazine situation. So my first exposure to Magpul was during my MARSOC time in 2006 time frame. So during that time frame, of course, we were using USGI magazines at the time. Nothing else really existed, but we had issues once you started using magazines, especially any kind of impacts. You're very careful about, as soon as anything hit the ground, take a look at it. We had feed lip gauges back then to take a look at that. But we found that the Magpul followers improved the performance of the magazine, especially with respect to dust and grit, as well as being more tolerant of kind of rough handling. Most of us were running the Magpul follower back in those days, 2006 to 2008, which overlaps the beginning of the PMag, but there were only a few out there, right? So the early days of Magpul were focused, of course, the initial was the Magpul itself, which was a magazine accessory for the USGI magazine in order to be able to pull it from a magazine pouch more effectively and efficiently and have better control. But then other products followed. As I spoke about earlier, the follower was actually phenomenal in increasing the performance of the USGI magazine. And there were L plates, Ranger plates, other accessories for the USGI. But the biggest problem that they ran into was the metal body itself, the aluminum body. Stamping technologies, you deal with this dogleg curve. It's not constant curve geometry. There's issues with trying to do an anti-tilt follower and going around that dogleg. Any metal material for a magazine has deficiencies with respect to malleability in the feed lips and the ability to alter the geometry of the feed lips and then affect the performance of the magazine. So, there were other attempts at polymer magazines previously. All were not great. And so there was a material science aspect of being able to do the PMag, going back in the UBR, the CTR days, figuring out that material and like, hey, we could probably make a magazine out of this. They designed a magazine, the Gen 1 PMag, and weren't really sure what it was going to do. They had high hopes based on the material properties that they were seeing and the design that they had, but weren't really sure what was going to come out of that mold. And everybody was pleasantly surprised with what came out of the mold. Obviously, it worked well. So there's Gen 1 PMags still kicking around out there, entirely reliable and entirely durable. But of course, we've learned a ton about magazine design in those years. No matter what you do to it, the material is designed so that you can deflect the feed lips, you can drop it, you can chuck it around, and it always returns to that exact perfect geometry. So as long as a PMag is not broken, the feed geometry is 100% always going to return to that correct feed geometry, and you can't really alter it. If you crack a PMag, yes, you'll have a crack, but as long as that magazine will retain rounds and you can put it into the magazine well of the firearm, and that magazine will continue to function. We've tested this multiple times and over hundreds and thousands of rounds, I think, at this point. Based on all of our material science and our development, and just experience testing various magazines of various constructions, we absolutely believe that polymer is a far superior material to make magazines out of, as long as it's the right polymer, the right reinforcement, the right additive packages, all those things. However, there are some platforms where they just did not leave enough room to be able to do that. There are some rifle platforms that fit into that category, and more significantly, a lot of handguns just don't have enough room inside the frame to have a correctly designed polymer magazine. And so it's difficult to make a polymer magazine. You can make a polymer magazine. There's people out there who have made polymer magazines. It's not going to work well. There's compromises in geometry, there's compromises in performance all over the place. So it just doesn't work in some platforms. We were able to do it in the Glock, using very specific materials, and because of the fact that they left enough wall stock in order to make a magazine that was thick enough to do it right there. And most other handgun platforms do not allow you that leeway. So we looked at some options. And there are a lot of different ways to do things. The best solution may have been a more obvious one, and there was room to advance things. And the reality of the situation was there was enough room for improvement in magazine design, follower design, spring design in handgun magazines to just make a better magazine out of metal. That's where we get the AMAG. First fitment for the AMAG is for the SIG 320 family of handguns. It's a stainless magazine. You don't ever have to worry about rust. We've used precision laser welding so that there's less grinding. You've got witness holes along the back. Very slightly altered some of the rib geometry as well as follower geometry. We've definitely altered spring design in order to get increased performance, better lockback performance on the slide, better ejection from the handgun when empty. All those things, easier floor plates to use, all those things that were little details, but that'll increase the magazine performance. And just due to economies of scale and things like that, the price point is going to be very effective. Improve follower design, improve spring design especially, and so you end up with a magazine that performs as well or better than the OEM at a better price point, and it has some features that make a lot of sense. The other thing we have in all of our products is the Magpul standards and testing and consistency. Some of the benefits that you'll see apply to the AMAG. It may be made by manufacturer A, it may be made by manufacturer B. When we did the first study, it's like different spring designs, there's some different geometry in the way things are bent, and different welding and grinding standards, different material performance and coating performance. You're buying what you think is the same thing, and you end up with something that could be wildly disparate in performance levels. So when you buy a Magpul product, it's always going to be a Magpul product. All of our products are made to the same standard. They're all QC'd by the same folks. And we are extremely strict in our standards and our consistency along the entire product line. Everything we make is QC'd to a level that's borders on obsessive compulsive insanity. But it works out for the consumer that way. All right, so one of my favorite things that we've been able to do, because simply we've been working on it since I arrived at Magpul, and actually before we arrived at Magpul, is the T-Mag. So we actually have a translucent magazine that we are happy with the performance with finally, and this is through years of material science and development. This material combination was not even available a few years ago, and so this is something new. Now we finally have a PMAG or actually a T-Mag in this case, that is translucent and meets PMAG standards. So it's the durability standards and reliability standards of a Gen M3 PMAG. It's really similar in form factor to the original E-Mags. It's a slick-sided magazine. It's got the same slim Gen M3 floor plate, so it's a slimmer floor plate than the E-Mag. So you end up with that same super slick form factor that the E-Mag has. It has a rear spine over insertion stop. We've got plenty of grip surfaces on the front and back. We have the dot matrix. The numbers on the side of a T-Mag will correspond with a painted follower leg, just like on the mag level window. And so as that decrements, you'll be able to have an accurate indication of the true remaining rounds in the magazine, even after the round stack goes completely inside the mag well. You get the capability to look and see what type of ammunition is loaded. You can easily see that it's all the same. You can easily count the exact number of rounds for, like, guard force turnover was one of the things that we were hit from professional users. SIMs, UTMs, those sort of things, as well as blanks. You can make sure that there are no live rounds loaded in or mixed in there. And just some people like the aesthetic as well, honestly. An olive drab type color. People have asked for an olive drab color in the PMags back that we haven't made since the early M2 days. And so this magazine will be an olive drab translucent color, ODT. Back in the day of testing of, standing on the top of a ladder and dropping PMags, which honestly is actually how the US government still does it. It's just dropping or archery releases. Now we have their pneumatic actuated drop fixtures that will exactly duplicate an impact angle multiple times so that you can make sure that you're hitting every little idiosyncratic impact methodology, and we have high-speed video of all those impacts so we can see where the failure mechanisms are and all that stuff. There's still a bunch of knuckleheads that take the stuff and try and break it, right, or get it to not work right. Beating a tire swing with an equipped shotgun, an 870 with the SGA furniture, was one of the test parameters that was executed in the subjective testing back in the day. So you found things in the subjective stuff that you did not find, no matter how detailed you made a laboratory test plan, there were still some things that you would find in both aspects that are valuable, and we still maintain that to this day. There's still an aspect of just messing with stuff and seeing if you can break it.